Just want to say thanks to everybody for being here with us, and especially to Sarah and Kim as we dive into this webinar tonight. Real quick, just wanted to share a little bit about West Sound Youth for Christ. We're a nonprofit here in Kitsap in North Mason, and we work with kids primarily between the ages of 11 to 19 through a bunch of different programs, working with kids in after school programs and club meetings, pregnant and parenting teen moms and dads in the community, as well as kids in the juvenile detention center. So kind of touching every pocket of kids from the super ultra low income up to the middle and upper class in our community. And so we decided about a month or so ago to start hosting some webinars specifically for parents on how to help us navigate the COVID-19 crisis with kids in our home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the foreseeable future. And so we've done a few of these about education. We've done some on kids' mental health. We have another one coming up on some fitness and nutrition stuff. But tonight, we are going to focus on the mental health of us as parents, because when you get on an airplane, the first thing they tell us to do is to take the oxygen mask and to put it on ourselves first, and then to help the person next to us. And it's easy as a parent for us to forget that first step of taking care of us first, and we want to help our kids, but today is all about us as parents. So I want to give a second and ask Kimberly if she would be able to introduce herself to everybody who's listening.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Kimberly. I'm a marriage and family therapist here in Kitsap County. I live in Bremerton, and I grew up in Bremerton actually, so this is my home. I'm a mom to 3 girls, all teenagers, and I'm also married.
Great, thank you so much. Sarah, would you introduce yourself to us?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I am also a marriage and family therapist. I specialize in couples and adolescents, and I have 3 teenagers at home as well, and one is trying to graduate. Well, I don't know, whatever that means right now. And what else? I'm married, and I actually live on the east side of the state, but used to live over in the Bremerton area as well.
Yep. And as I said, my name is Phil Daubenspeck, and I'm the Executive Director of West Sound Youth for Christ. I'm a parent of 2 teenagers and a young adult, and I'm a single parent. And so I bring that perspective to this crowd. So tonight we're just going to dive in. And if you're watching on Facebook, we want you to feel free to type in questions. We'll be getting to those as we go along. If you're in the webinar, there's a spot for you to put some Q&A, and we'll be checking that as well. So we'd love to get your questions coming in tonight as we start sharing. But the first thing that we've heard a little bit from parents is this question: is it okay for me to feel like I want to get away from my kids? So we'll start with that one. Whoever wants to take that first question.
I'll jump in on that one. The answer is yes. I talk to lots of moms, and that's a really nice way to say it. They want to run away and not come back is how I talk to moms. It is you feel pretty limited as a parent right now. If you were to be sent to prison, all of your needs would be taken care of, but you still would feel like you wanted to get out. And it feels a little bit like that. I think for a lot of parents and moms in particular, we don't have a lot of options, and we're sort of forced to be with the same few people day in and day out. And I think absolutely that is a normal feeling. I want to leave, and this place is driving me crazy. So I don't think that that's indicative of you being crazy. I think it just is. That's the reality. Is there's no escape from what we're doing right now, and our lives previous to the month of March were not built around this idea of being quarantined or contained. And so we've been all working for maybe a decade or more as parents in a certain direction. And then in March, everything shut down, and then we were forced to reevaluate. So wanting to escape, wanting this to end, wanting to get out, needing an escape. Yeah, we're all in that little mess together. Yeah. What you do with that, however, is what will determine whether you are dealing with that well or not. So when you have that feeling of wanting to escape, how you escape is key, whether it actually restores you or it actually puts you back and makes you makes it worse. So I think we're gonna talk about that in a little bit, but.
Sure. That's great. Kim, thoughts?
Yeah, Phil, you mentioned a certain demographic. You just talked about being a single parent. So I can imagine that there's a lot of people that are parenting on their own, or parenting on their own at home while their spouse is working. And so, yeah, I would expect people to feel like they need a break. That's just natural, normal behavior to need a break. I think it's key to express that in a way so that your children understand they can take breaks too. And we've talked about this a little bit in some of the past webinars, that children are humans also. And so if parents allow themselves to be seen in that light to their kids can now feel a little normal in that too. So single parents, for sure, you're going to need a break. You got to figure that out so that you can continue to do this parenting. Parents who are at home while the other person's working, you know that you definitely need to have a plan, and then share with your kids so they know, right? Because then it normalizes it. Like, hey, I need to take a break outside. Do you ever feel like you need a break from me? And then your kids can answer that honestly and feel safe doing that.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of goes into this next question, where I think that sometimes we feel bad. We are older, we can drive, some of our kids can't drive, so the options for them leaving the house are limited unless they're with us. And so, there's this, I think, feeling sometimes of like, I feel bad when I leave by myself, but I leave my kids at home. But I think that's probably, there's some health to that too, right? Like there's some health to like, hey, I'm gonna go make this trip on my own. So, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
In Washington State, just if you want to, I know some parents worry about the legalities around that. Like they wonder, are they allowed to do that? I mean, in Washington State, the rule, unless it's changed, has always been that as a parent, you can kind of make that determination when your kids can stay home. So there's that. I know some parents think, can I actually leave? So the safety of your kids, can you leave them at home by themselves safely? If the answer is yes, sure, why not? Again, it teaches them some independence. We've all been together for lots and lots of hours. And so for a parent to take a road trip somewhere, I think it's okay. I always feel like an equal balance. It continues to come up to me, like, how do we equally do this for people in our house? So if the kids can't drive, but yet they want to take a ride and see what the world looks like, be open to that too. So parents, take your ride, take your trip, but then I think, of course, if your kids are open to it, take them out for a ride also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the mom guilt is real. So when we feel like, there's so much guilt around all of this. And so it's important to just acknowledge that guilt shouldn't be a motivator for anything. And a happy mom makes a happy home. So as a parent, you need to do things that are going to fill your cup so that when you return, you feel like you have more to give. You've got more to give to your kids. And not everybody is the same. So like I have a kid who I talked to him about quarantine, and he just said, I think this is my ideal habitat. I never have to leave the house. I don't have to talk to anybody. I just do what I want when I want to do it. I get to eat all the time. Like I never want this to end. So that kid doesn't need an escape, but I need an escape from that child. I have other kids who are highly, highly, highly social, and this feels like the worst thing ever. And so finding ways for them to connect so I can alleviate some of that guilt. But leaving and going and doing something that fills your cup is important. It's important because being a parent who is on 24/7, trying to hold down a job. I was talking with this mom who has little kids, and she's trying to work from home. She's never had to work from home. Her husband is an essential worker, so she's on her own. She's trying to figure out, how do I have professional business meetings at 10 o'clock in the morning when she's got toddlers running around at full volume? She's got no backup. That is not how we've structured our life. And for her to understand that it's okay when husband gets home for her to need to go to the grocery store and just wander around aimlessly. I realize we're not supposed to, but the reality is that's what she needs to do, because she has to collect her thoughts for her next business meeting. And so I don't think leaving might be an essential thing for you to maintain your health, as long as your kids, I would agree with Kimberly, as long as your kids are safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what about we are home, I've been working from home. My kids are schooling from home. And so what are, I don't know, boundaries, I think, are super important for us to have. So I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this as a question, but maybe it's not really a question, maybe it's just a conversation that we have. But, boundaries around, like today I had a really long meeting this morning. All morning I was in a meeting, and then it went into the afternoon. And so, so my kids knew that. Fortunately, we've got good boundaries. They know to knock on the door before they come in, et cetera, et cetera. But, if you've got younger kids or kids who maybe don't have those boundaries with you, that can be a pretty tough thing. So, how can we begin to, if we don't have those, kind of put those boundaries in place? What's like a good step for that if you need to kind of get something like that in place?
Boundaries are important, and kids have boundaries at school. They have boundaries at sports. They have boundaries in all their recreational stuff. Everybody has boundaries, and boundaries might need to be reevaluated. So your family has always had boundaries. Your family has always had them. The question is, do you need to reevaluate your boundaries to make everybody just a little bit more successful? And so having the conversation with your kids, maybe that's a dinner time conversation. Look, I'm really struggling in my work meetings to get stuff done because I feel like you guys are arguing right outside my door. How can we solve this? Putting the team approach in is going to be key to getting buy-in from everybody. And even little kids have great input if we just allow it. But it starts with not a complaint, but just, this is a need I have. How can we solve this need as a team? And I think if you were a CEO of an organization, you wouldn't just hammer down effectively you would create a leadership team. This is a problem we're having. What is the solution? And you might already know that the solution might be, look, I need 2 hours of uninterrupted work time every day, or whatever it is. But your kids need to be in on that to have ownership in it. And kids are smart. They get it. They are not allowed to run around their classroom at full volume all day long with their teacher. They understand that there's boundaries in their class. If they want their teacher's attention, they have to wait for the teacher to be available. So even kindergartners understand that. After the first couple of weeks, that's what they understand. So kids get boundaries. The question is just, do they need to be reevaluated right now?
Sure.
Yeah, Phil, from a parent perspective, I think we can't always assume that people have an understanding of boundaries. I think you brought this up before, and I feel like in our culture, we may use different words, and so we were talking before about, understanding what is the culture like in your house. So are you going to use the word rule, right? Like Sarah's talking about not running around. That may be a rule, and you may be able to use that word. So the word boundary is interchangeable sometimes for people. And I think they struggle sometimes with that. So I don't even know that parents who have never really had to make those rules or put those boundaries know how to do it just yet. So I think starting kind of simple is having, again, use something that your kids will understand. So if use an example for their life. Say like, hey, when you guys are playing your games and you don't really like for me to come in and interrupt because then your person dies, that's kind of like me. When I'm in a meeting, if you come and you make all this noise, I remember I'm live now, like I'm doing this thing called Zoom. And so getting the kids to understand, you have to respect that. And then they'll get it. Like Sarah was saying, kids are really flexible in thinking, and they're always learning. So I think it's the parents sometimes who just don't know. Like we don't always know. So figuring out, what does it look like in your household? How do I name it? And have I ever had a boundary? I think adults maybe live without boundaries, so they don't even know how to set it up.
Mm, mm. That's great. That's great. So as you guys think through this, and we've known we were going to do this for a little while, so I thought this was a great question. But what would you say is the biggest risk to a parent's mental health right now? Or mental well-being, maybe I would say.
Loneliness. I think loneliness. Loneliness is a real thing, for people, and they maybe don't feel it often. So a lot of clients that I'm seeing right now, I think, are feeling kind of lonely. They're socially isolated. They're torn between, how long do I follow the rules for? Again, here, those are those rules, right? Like, how long do I follow the rules for? I know how to help my kids. I tell them they can't do this, but what about me as an adult? I want to go out, but then my kids will think I'm a rule breaker. So I think parents are really feeling lonely. They just, especially, again, back to single parents. You said, if you don't have another adult in the house, so if you're following the rules, right, you're not seeing people, and you're the only adult, and you have lots of kids or one child, or you're in this space, you start to feel a little lonely. And so I think that that's what I'm noticing with some adults, is just I miss my people at work, I miss my friends that I go to coffee with, my kids are at school, all these different things I hear people saying, and it all goes back to they're just really lonely.
Yeah, I would agree. Loneliness is a big one, and probably people don't even recognize what that is. That's a new one. I would say for the type A driven humans who had the illusion that we were under control, I think this idea of being powerless, that we're not really in control, and we don't have any power to get back in control, is really difficult for those people who are used to making decisions and executing decisions, setting up structures in their family to make things work. They've lived life in a certain way, and all of that has been taken away. And there doesn't feel like there's an end in sight. It doesn't, we're promised that it's going to be just for a little bit longer, but that little bit longer keeps being extended. And the answer, I don't know, makes people feel very powerless. And often what happens when we feel powerless is we start grabbing power in other areas, or there's this sense of depression, anxiety, I'm giving up, and this, I've lost all control of all things, the swirling downward spiral. So that's what I see with my type A driven people.
Yeah, that's great. Loneliness and loss of control, two really big things there to be aware of. We were talking, as we were preparing for this, a little bit about the different demographics in our community, and this is a shock to some demographics, and to other demographics, this is just another day in the life of, in a lot of ways. And so what would you say to a parent who is seeing maybe other people stressed out, or kind of freaking out a little bit, if you will, at the chaos that's happening because they're not used to it, and they're just like, almost feel bad because they're just kind of doing life like normal, because this is just kind of life for them. I mean, what would you say to that parent?
I would say to that parent to remain open, right? And to understand everybody's circumstances are different, to know that they matter just as much, right? Even though they're not the target of a lot of the things that people are talking about right now and coping and all of that, but that they still really do matter, and they have a voice. I think that people are feeling hurt, really feel their feelings are hurt because they hear so much about all of these things that everybody's losing. But like you said, they kind of live in that. That's kind of like their life. There's not much that they've lost because this is the way that they're already living, which is fine, right? Like we all have the ways that we live. We're unique in different ways. But I think they feel very hurt when they hear about the loss that people are experiencing. So I would encourage those parents to just know everybody's different, unique, and they matter just as much as everybody else. Although a lot of the information is geared towards parents who are struggling in a very different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think as human beings, we have so much in common, and if we can find something in common. So while we might not be struggling with, if you're an introvert, you might not be struggling with extreme loneliness. If you haven't had a loss of a job, you might not be struggling with the financial pressure. If you've always homeschooled your kids and you love being around your kids 24/7 and everything's glorious and you think the world should live like you, and you can't relate with the mom on Facebook that is just whining and complaining every day. The reality is that we all have struggled with hard stuff, and to tap into we can struggle, we've had struggles, and just tap into that. So you might not really be able to relate with the specific struggle, but everybody can relate with, man, I remember financial pressure. It's horrible. We've all had those moments with our kids where we think, I'm frustrated with my kid. We've all had marital struggles. We've all been there at some point, and to be empathetic, you don't have to own their stuff, to just be empathetic. What do you need when you're struggling with some? You just need somebody to come alongside you and go, this too shall pass, and I'll sit in the dirt with you while we're waiting.
Yeah, that's great. That's great feedback and great to remember. It's great. The terminology I keep hearing around this is we're all in a storm, but we're all on different boats. Our boats all look a little different. The storm is happening all around us. Some of us in bigger boats, some of us in little boats, some of us, know how to steer the boat. Some of us don't, but we're all kind of in the storm together. And I think that's really important to remember. Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit about these things that can create stress for parents. What are some tools that maybe we could use to help mitigate some of that stress that we're feeling?
I think that human beings are great at problem solving. Mm-hmm. We're great at it. The problem is when we don't give ourselves the best fighting chance to problem solve. So our brains are so good at being adaptive. I mean, we're just good at it. Kids are good at it. Adults are good at it if we give ourselves a fighting chance. And so the things that you need for effective problem solving are, you need to sleep. You need to have a consistent pattern of sleep. You need to have good nutrition. You need to feel like you're in control of food. Food's not in control of you. You need to have an exercise plan where you feel like your body has a chance to move the way that it's intended to move. And then you need to hydrate. When you put these building blocks into your life, your brain has a fighting chance to identify problems appropriately and to then come up with decent solutions. And what I find as I'm talking with parents is they're trying to solve problems, but they're not putting the tools in place. So they might be, and they find that they're ineffective problems. And so sometimes therapy is a great idea because it kind of just looks and says, that's really not working for you. Like Dr. Phil says, how's that working for you? But other times it's just, can you just put some good building blocks in so that your brain has a chance to solve the problem? And then if you can identify what the problem is, then you can start brainstorming some solutions. And then you can start trying to look at, okay, this didn't make me feel better. This didn't make my family function better. This isn't moving me in a direction that I need to move. And then you've got a chance to reevaluate as you move along. But if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating, if you're not working out, if you're not drinking water, you're reactive. And that reactiveness, your kids respond to this negative reaction. So what I find is I talk with parents, and when parents aren't responding well, kids don't respond well. They get needier and they get more, and then everything just kind of comes up level and everybody's fighting and it's not working well. the parent has an amazing ability to bring everything back down and say, okay, we're gonna deal with one problem at a time. We're gonna smooth this out. I don't think that we don't have enough time on this webinar to sort of, and Kimberly is amazing at this, by the way. She's amazing at breaking things down into little tiny baby steps. So you should contact her if you need help with that. But give your brain the best chance to be a good problem solver for your family. That's what you need to do, because you're smart. Parents are smart. Parents are good problem solvers, and they can access that if they give themselves a fighting chance.
Totally, yes. I agree. So I think what Sarah's talking about, I work with a lot of little kids, and so that's kind of where my passion is at. So breaking things down is something that I sometimes have to do with them just because they're little. Although, they get it after a while. And so I think with this, what you're asking around this stress, right? And I think about all the different demographics that are probably listening to this. Everybody identifies stress differently. So that's the first thing. How do you identify? You have to identify the stress, right? There's things that I do in life and somebody else may say, oh my gosh, that's absolutely crazy. And I think, what are you talking about? But I'm walking around with a headache and, I'm tired and I can barely move. And so I have to identify, oh, you know what? That's a little stressful for me. Driving on E in my car and gas running out every time, that's stress. I don't need to do that. So I think first we have to acknowledge what is stress in our life, because it's not going to look the same for all of us. We all function differently. Once we do that, then we can do all those things that Sarah was talking about, be able to eliminate things or identify what it is so that we can have a plan, then share the plan with, the people in our household so that we can all have stress relief, so you identify it, then you have stress relief, or some people call that stress management. So, you'll be thinking about different ways to manage your stress. If you have to catch several buses to get to work, you can't eliminate the bus ride, right? But you can listen to something on the bus that's relaxing so that when you get there, you are a calmer person and you're not feeling as stressed. So identify it and then approach it, and then, make changes if you can. Yeah.
That's great. Any other stuff you guys would want to add to that, or thinking around like just tips to help kind of mitigate some of the stuff that this kind of brings on emotionally right now?
One of the tools that I really encourage people to do is when they're starting to feel that rise in emotion, that frustration, that building of I'm gonna explode, or I feel like I need to shut down and I can't do this. Call this the fight or flight mode. We just need to attack something, we need to fix something, or I just can't deal with anything right now. When you start to feel that rise, and I think as parents, we experience that with our kids all the time. I need to engage with you and I need to pick this fight with you, or I don't want to engage with my kid at all. I just need them to go away, right? This constant. The tool that I like to use is just stop for a minute and take a breath and then challenge. Is this the battle I need to fight? Is this how I need to fight this battle? What is really going on? Sometimes the stress has nothing to do with the situation that we're forced to be in right then and there, but challenge the attack mode or the shutdown mode. So stop, challenge, and then choose a response that's going to get you more of what you want. So sometimes you need to choose to engage in the discussion. Sometimes you need to choose to take a deep breath and take a walk around the block. But to just stop for a second as you feel that rise of, it feels in your body. Most people can say, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, that rising feeling, to stop, challenge it, and then choose a response and get you more of what you want.
Yeah. I think, Phil, when you asked that about, is there more? So people have to, again, get in tune with who they are. And so it's really, what Sarah's talking about, again, is kind of paying attention to what you feel. So some people don't actually stop long enough to do that. So I guess one practical step with managing stress is really just stopping. Like you said, I tell people that just slow down if you can, right? Just slow down a little bit and then figure out, where do I feel whatever I feel the most at? Like, do I feel that in the morning when I'm getting up? Is it because I didn't pick out my clothes last night? Okay, maybe if I picked out my clothes last night, then I wouldn't be rushing this. Like, so those types of things, you got to slow down to do that sometimes. And so I think a practical step for people would be just slow down and really pay attention to when you're feeling what. Like, I talk to people about using timelines a lot. And so being able to say, especially right now in this season that we've been in, if I talk to somebody and they say, I've been feeling really stressed out, and I say, when did that start? And they're like, March 1st or 2nd or 3rd. And I said, oh man, wow. Was it after your kids started like staying home and you started teaching them, things from the internet? Yeah. And so now you can say, oh, wow, well, those two things may correlate. So the stress that you feel could be temporary. I think everybody's feeling something, like Sarah was saying right now. But if you don't slow down, you're not going to recognize it. You're going to miss it. So I think people have to slow down a little bit first and then pay attention to what goes together, almost like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Like, what fits, when did this start?
Yeah. So when we think about slowing down and taking that time to pause for ourselves, what could that look like for somebody to take maybe 15 or 20 minutes and take that time to just pause for themselves? What might that look like?
First, I would like to say that people need 45 minutes to an hour once they've peaked. It's not 15 minutes. You need time. You need time to bring everything back down. And everybody is a little bit different. So for me as a person, I've discovered that I need to go once I have anxiety, once I feel like things are really out of control, putting my running shoes on and going for a run allows all that adrenaline to get redispersed, and it makes everything in my brain function. Not everybody's a runner. I get that. I hear that all the time. Running is the devil. But finding that thing that you can do, but it's much longer than you think it is. Once you get into fight or flight, it's much longer than you think it is for your brain to come back online to be a good problem solver. So aim for like an hour, which is really difficult when you have little kids. It's really difficult to find those moments. But if you can do that, if you can find that space, then when you re-engage, you're so much more effective because you're not coming back to the same thing. You're coming back to the same situation with a different brain attached. So longer than you think.
Yeah. So I guess if you want to be proactive, and you want to take those 15 minutes and do something to say, you know what, I'm not quite feeling the stress yet. I don't quite have this anxious response yet. If you want to do something in those 15 minutes before that, you could use that time to maybe read or close your eyes and meditate or pray or relax or whatever you're going to do in that space and time. And that prepares you for your day. So kind of like that self-care thought, like getting people into taking time for themselves, slowing down, and then taking care of themselves. Because otherwise they will end up in that anxious space Sarah's talking about, responding and needing more time to kind of recover. So 15 minutes, if you have that 15 minutes and you're not already, feeling the stress, take good care of yourself, however that looks like, people right now, so it's spring, a lot of people are going outside and just doing stuff with plants, or just sitting outside and listening to the birds, all kinds of stuff that's relaxing in that way. You can do that in 15 minutes. You can journal. This morning I did like some writing. Actually, I did on my phone, so I did some typing in just a few minutes. You can do that, so I think if you have 15 minutes and you're not already feeling a little out of control emotionally, take good care of yourself in those 15 minutes.
That's great. I was just thinking through as we're talking about this, and so much of this comes from, interaction with kids. And I think something that I've had to learn how to be better at is asking questions of my kids, especially when that stress gets high, right? And instead of coming at them or, did you do this? yes or no. It's more like, why did this happen? And allowing them to take a moment to respond. So what would you guys say um, is just a good way for us to be able to interact and ask good questions of our kids that elicit conversation? Obviously not necessarily in the heat of the moment. We don't want to do that because we're both elevated and things are hot, right? But when it comes back down and we actually want to enter into this conversation and talk about things, what are some good tips on just how do we kind of dive into those conversations? Like what would you guys say are a couple of your best dive into conversation questions, conversation starters that you guys would use maybe?
Well, I like to start. Well, so when I see kids, I talk to kids everywhere, probably similarly. So I like to ask them things that are personal to them, that matter to them. Like, so what have you been up to? Things like that. Of course, if you live with kids, you think you know what they've been up to, but maybe you don't. And that's where communication breaks down, because you assume something about your kids that's maybe not true. So I like to ask kids that, like, what have you been up to lately? And then they'll tell me something, usually. And even the kids in the house may say, well, we live together, but I don't know what you've been doing. What have you been looking at, online, or like, what have you been reading, or what have you been playing with lately? So I like to start with that, being curious about their world. Sometimes I think there's a thing, I don't know if Sarah uses these sometimes, but they're conversation starters. So those are, you can get those online. So sometimes people who are struggling in that area, I'll kind of point them towards that too. They ask just little, questions that you maybe never thought to ask, because I feel like we've been together so long that maybe we're running out of questions. So I point people in that direction. Anything that's going to get you curious about your child is fun to them, and it's not in a way that's judgmental. So fun things about their life, not like you just said, when was the last time, you did the dishes? Like, did you do all your chores today? That's those are questions I think that maybe we have to ask. They're technical questions, but they're not life, like you don't, like this shirt, give life, right? Like they're not life-giving questions. They're just, did you do this stuff? And so you want to be curious about your kids so that they can understand that they are important, their little lives matter, and they have things to tell you that you want to know.
Yes. As I work with adolescent kids want a better relationship with their parents. They want it, and they get stuck in the technical conversation loop with their parents. Because their parents are constantly worried about whether the kid is doing all the things, and the kid gets defensive and they get in this terrible communication loop. But I hear over and over as adolescents sit in my office, I wish my mom would listen. I wish my mom would care about the things that I care about. I wish she would understand it's not like how, right? I wish my dad, fill in the blank. And so finding ways to understand what their stresses are instead of just giving them their stresses, right? They may not be stressed out about school at all. They might be stressed out about something completely different. Their major stress might be that their friend is going through something and they are not there for them. And to know that their stresses might not be the things that you're giving them to stress about. You're going to have to ask technical questions because they're not independent. They don't have the ability to run their own lives yet, despite what they say. But they have their own thoughts. And to know what those are, you're going to have to just listen and listen well. I would agree with Kimberly that there are conversation starters that are great. If you struggle with, I'm married to an engineer, and my engineer husband does not know how to start a conversation. That's not technical. It's just not in his ability, but he uses those conversation starters. He pulls things offline and says, oh, I have a dad joke of the day or whatever. And that opens up a conversation. I like to open with, tell me the best and worst part of your day, of your week. Once I get to know a kid, I often ask them, what were you successful at this week? What moved you toward what you want to be moving toward? What's holding you back? So they're setting their own goals but then also what's holding you back? What's intimidating to you? What are you avoiding? And not giving them answers, but listening to their problem solving strategies. As we launch adolescence into young adulthood, what we need them to do is have a tool bag that they have developed to be successful outside of our care. Giving them tools when they're 16, 17, 18 looks very different. It's more about them experimenting and go, did that get you what you wanted? No? Okay, then let's move on. So it's less about telling them what their stress is, more about listening and asking them to solve their own problems in a way that fits with your family values and doesn't interrupt what's going on.
Yeah.
But I like highs and lows because it tells you exactly where they're at.
Yeah.
And not every kid is stressing about the same thing.
Very true. Even in your house.
Even in your house. Yeah.
They all have their own things. Yeah, the reason I was asking that, one of the reasons I was asking that about questions and those conversations with your kids is because I think some of the stress that many folks might be experiencing right now is because of the lack of conversation with their kids at their home right now. And so when that communication, it feels like you're just grinding against each other to try and get information. That can just elevate the stress level. And so, having the fun conversations with your kids and not the robotics of like, did you do the dishes? Is your homework done? But the like, hey, tell me what's going on in this part of your life, or how are your friends doing, or how, when we're done with this, what do you want to do? Those just kind of funner questions that get kids out of the here and now and allow us a little bit into their world as parents. We got to take those opportunities when we can get them to be able to dive deep with them and get to know them, I think. And I think that opens the door to us really getting to know our kids, and then brings our stress level down, because then when we ask them to do the dishes, it's not this attack. We're not attacking each other, right? We're doing life together. And so that it's a little easier of a conversation, I think. So any other things you guys wanted to say on that topic at all? No, we don't want to be a dead horse, so we'll just move on. What are some healthy ways somebody might create some space for themselves in their home?
Some healthy ways to create space in their home. So I shared this before. I'm an only child. I grew up as an only child in a house with multiple adults, my grandmother, my mom, my aunt, my grandfather before he passed away. So I felt like I was a master at kind of making space in my home because I was the only kid. So now as an adult, it feels challenging because kids tend to want to be in your space. And so what I do to create space for myself is allow my kids in my space. So that when I ask them to please go out of my space, they understand, oh, I've been in here for a while. I've been hanging out. I come in here, I talk to my mom, in her space, and she allows me here. It's not a secret space. And so that's what's been most helpful to me, I think, as an adult. And I think as a kid, as I think back to being a kid, that is different, although it's similar, right? Still creating space, it's shared space, but people are invited. So it's not like this, it's not this sacred space that nobody can come in, because then people definitely want to be there, right? So I think parents are like, don't ever come in here. And kids are like, let me see, I want to see in there, what's in there? And you have no space. So part of creating your space is sharing the space, with the people that you live with, and then gently saying to them, I need to be in this space alone now, right? And so it's not a mystery. You've been in here plenty of times. You can come back in an hour, but I think you have to, it's shared space. It can't just be off limits space. For me, maybe other people are different. And so maybe people do have like that sacred, this is off limit, but I've noticed for me, it works best when it's shared. So people can see in there, it's not hidden, and then they can come back. So we can create memories in that space too.
Yeah. I do think there are some personality differences. So Like, for instance, my husband has always worked from home. He's worked from home for 150 years. He's worked from home. His office is his space, and no one goes in his office. No one touches his pens. No one bothers his stuff, because if his stuff isn't where he needs it to be, he's not going to be able to function at his best self. So he intentionally comes out of his space and engages with the family outside of his space. He needs to find space. I think as a mom, I don't really have that option as much. I'm also a people person. And I think what's important, and Kimberly alluded to this, is when you have time together that's actually connecting, not just information sharing, but connecting time, it's then easier to be apart time. But when kids feel like you're not ever emotionally available, you're physically in the room, but you're not emotionally available, they're going to continue to pursue you because they need an emotional connection. Couples are in the same boat in that they need an emotional connection that actually brings them together in powerful ways every day. Otherwise, you get this, leave me alone, why don't you pay attention to me, leave me alone, why don't you get this distance or pursuer pattern happening. Kids do it too. So finding ways to be proactive, as Kimberly was saying, to be connecting, emotionally connecting. It doesn't take a ton of time, 5-10 minutes a day, that you're meeting an emotional need for them, so that when you do need your space, they feel like they're going to come back and they're going to pursue me again. They're going to be present for me later. I can put my needs on hold. Little kids are the same. They need to know you're going to be emotionally available for me when I need it later, so I can hold it now. That's a good skill for them to be learning. So being proactive before you demand your space is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And yeah, I think everybody needs that alone time. Kids need it, parents need it, and it's where peace comes in like a flood when we allow ourselves to go there. So this is, I think, a big one. You know what? How can we ensure that we're celebrating wins at home and celebrating wins for ourselves? You know, maybe as an adult, you're used to being at a job where people praise you because you're really good at what you do all the time, and you're missing that now because you're at home. Or maybe you are that extrovert that just needs conversation and to be around people, or maybe you just really need physical touch, like you need hugs and pats on the back and handshakes, and that's just like, for you just thrive off of those things, and those aren't available to you in the traditional ways that you're used to it. So how are some ways that, and I put celebrating wins, but it's not necessarily a win, it's just that those things that you need, that you're missing, and how can we make sure that those little things that are important to us, like somebody telling me, you know, do you just go tell somebody that you need them to still tell you you're doing a good job? Like, you still need your boss to tell you you're doing a good job, even though you're not there, you know, and that's awkward to say maybe, but like, it might be really important to you. Like, your performance might go up if you tell your boss that you need that, you know? And I don't know, just what are your guys' thoughts on things like that?
Well, when you talk about the celebrating wins, especially if you're talking from the perspective of somebody who is now missing that, I think of like kids, maybe, for example, who are used to going to school and getting a lot of praise when they do something, but maybe their parents don't celebrate that way. So from the adult perspective of a person maybe who's used to getting that, I guess going back into themselves and finding what matters the most. So like, if you're used to being at work and you know, getting like a raise, and that's how you feel praised, maybe at home you'll have to start to find the things that you did well and kind of encourage yourself, right? Like, say, man, that was, you know what, that was pretty good. I nobody should have told me that, because all my kids are, you know, they just think I'm supposed to do these things, but I feel like that was a really great thing that I just did. So kind of going back into that space of like what do I value? What do I think I have what am I overcoming? And then say that to yourself. Because I think that a lot of people are, like you said, are used to somebody else telling them, but they don't tell themselves that. And that goes back to personalities, like Sarah said, because there's some people in the world who are used to encouraging themselves. And I think about the population that you were talking about at first. That group, people in a certain demographic are always encouraging themselves, right? Like, you can do it, you got it, let's go. So again, I think there's a lot of people that are doing really well with this because it's just natural. And then there's other people that are struggling because they're lacking in a certain area. But it's all about, how do you recognize what you're doing? And is it good enough for yourself to say, that was great. I did that. I accomplished something while being at home with my kids,
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Kimberly, that's so good. That's good information. That's good. I think it really starts with knowing being self-aware enough to know what is it that you're missing? What is it that you really are craving? What is it that you really want? And I think so much of we've done all of these things in routine and rhythm for so long before March, and we found ways to but we don't really know what that is, right? So this is a great opportunity to say, I do value physical touch. So how can I get that met appropriately? Or I do value, like, some moms I'm talking to, like, shopping is their thing, and Amazon Prime is just not doing it because they're not touching it, they're not feeling it, and to understand what is the thing that you're craving and that you don't have? What is the thing that makes you feel like you're winning at all? And with our kids or with our spouses or with our friends, we can just ask them, what are you proud of right now? What is awesome about what's going on right now? And you'll get a clue, and then maybe be able to build into that. But being self-aware is a huge piece of being able to get more of what you want, more of what you need to function. This is a great opportunity to stop, challenge, and choose when you're like, nobody likes me, nobody appreciates me, I'm doing all this work. Wait, what is it that I really need? Oh, I need somebody to acknowledge that I'm working hard. Could you just tell me that I'm doing it? I say that to my kids. Just tell me I'm doing a job. Tell me thank you. Tell me do something. And they pick that up. But if I say it, nobody, that's what I mean. I'll just keep working at it. So there's a great opportunity summit, great opportunity to be self-aware. What is it that you do need? There are just things that are just really, really hard. I have a friend who her big thing is and she's single, and she says, I usually get massages all the time, or I get a pedicure all the time. Mm. Those aren't available right now. Right. Those are hard things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think Sarah she said something that was really interesting to me about the ways that we all are as people and the needs. And what I wish I could see happen, like in this whole crisis, is that parents all over could come together and talk about those things that you just said, because I feel like we all are so gifted in different areas. So, maybe I've never had anybody say good job, but I know how to encourage myself. And maybe I'm missing people saying good job to me. So I'm talking to you about how to know how to encourage myself. I feel like as parents right now, maybe that's something that we could all do, is just support one another and say, let's all just kind of come together and recognize that I have a gift and ability that I can share with you in the area maybe that you're lacking in. And you can help me understand what it feels like, right? To have somebody say, I appreciate you. Right? I give you something, you give me something. And I think that these are moments and times when we can do that, right? Maybe we don't come together as parents because we're so busy, but now we just have some time. I don't even want to say extra time, because I know that that's been the thing. People say we don't have extra time, but we have some time. And we could just come together and say, you know what? This is what I do to feel better when nobody tells me good job. This is how I encourage myself. And then somebody can say, thank you for that, like Sarah was saying. And you can feel appreciated, right? That would be really cool to see parents support each other in that way through this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think having your group of people to reach out to is really important. If you have a group of people that you can reach out to, a church family or PTA family or school, whatever your people group is that you can connect with, to be able to reach out to them and have some of those conversations, like you were saying, Kim, is really important, because I think sometimes it takes things like this for us to realize that we really do need probably more people around us than we realize we need, to support us and to make us, just to keep us going. So I think that's great feedback there. Anything else you guys want to say? We're going to wrap this up here in a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to, if there's anything, Kim or Sarah, that you guys wanted to add that we haven't been able to address at this point. No? Sweet. Well, I'm going to share something on our screen here, that we are working on. I'm actually really excited to share this with everybody, because it's something that we're pretty happy to be able to share with just kind of everybody in our community, but specifically with young people. And something that we partnered with Sarah and Kim to be able to offer to young people kind of between the ages of 11 and 19. And those we're calling them just listening sessions. And they're just an easy way for a young person, 11 to 19 years old, to be able to connect with Sarah or Kim, and just a safe place for them to kind of share some of their feelings, things that they're going through, emotions they're feeling, just if they just need a safe place to get some words out, that sort of thing. We wanted to make this available to them. And so it's very easy for them to get in touch with either Sarah or Kim. They can just go to westsoundyfc.org/help. And when they go there, they'll see a little, all of the contact info is there for either Sarah or Kim, and you can reach out to them, and they'll just talk with those kids for a few minutes and kind of see where it goes. If they need a couple more conversations, they can set that up. If they just needed a few minutes just to chat with somebody, that's available to them. And so if you have kids in your home that need a safe adult to talk to, you can let them know about this. Again, the info is on that website for you to be able to go to and get information on that. So Sarah, Kim, did either of you want to say anything about this?
No, I think just like what you said, to know that it's free for the kids to reach out. And then, like you mentioned, that if they needed to talk more, that I wanted parents to also know that is free, too. So if they called, if they say, hey, there's more that I need to talk about, I didn't want the parents to think that there would be, like, at least for me, that there would be a financial burden to them, that would just, it still continues to just be free.
Okay, that's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are a parent and you have a kid, sometimes it's a little scary when you say, hey, there's this therapist or this counselor, but maybe just say there's some adults that just want to listen. And if you're struggling, great. And I know that sometimes this is something that can be super effective peer-to-peer. So this is something, maybe your kids don't need this, but maybe your kids know of a friend who really needs to reach out to somebody to talk to because they've been talking to each other. Sometimes this isn't going to come great from a parent, but it can come great from a friend. And so as we're talking about these conversation starters that you can have with your kids, I think one of the great ones is, how are your friends doing? And you can ask those questions. And then if they have a friend who's struggling right now, this is just a great safe place for them. It's not that anything's wrong, but it's just a safe place where they can share kind of what they're feeling, their emotions, where they're at with life. Because as we all know, we're here because life is hard right now. And so we want to help these kids with that. So that's available. Thank you, Kim and Sarah, for making that available to kids in our community. I know that will be a huge blessing to them. And so thank you very, very much for offering your services in that way. If you have questions, more questions about West Sound Youth for Christ, we just shared our website up there, but you can also just text see the story to 555-888, and we'll ask you a couple questions, and then we'll be able to send you more information that way as well, to make it very quick and easy. So Kim and Sarah, thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing this information. For those of you that were in the room with us in Zoom in the webinar, thank you for being with us. And for those who jumped in on Facebook Live, thank you. And everybody, have a great night and a great week. We'll see you later.